Hola, bon dia a tothom. First of all, let me express once again our gratitude, our satisfaction that you are here, not only today, all the semester, which is much more important for us. And we are sure that this academic experience is going to enrich, extend our pedagogical way, and of course is going to enrich each of our students as a professor visiting you, and we hope also your academical way. So thank you very much. Let me say just a few words in Catalan. As you know, the English language is not my best. I feel more comfortable in our language. Bé, bon dia a tots i agrair-vos que estem aquí. He de dir que en nom de tot l'equip de direcció, per nosaltres aquest acte té una doble satisfacció. Per un costat, el fet de poder celebrar una conferència amb la primera persona d'aquest ETSAB Visiting Studio, com sabeu, obre aquesta etapa de l'escola, i la segona, i no menys important per nosaltres, fer-ho en aquesta sala de graus, que mica en mica i d'una manera natural està començant a acollir tot un conjunt d'activitats acadèmiques rellevants, com poden ser les lectures de graus, algunes conferències externes que aquest petit format complementa el de la sala. Bé, jo voldria abans de res agrair que això hagi estat possible a diferents agents. Per un costat, com no pot ser d'altra manera, a l'Ajuntament de Barcelona. Els hem d'agrair que gràcies al seu suport de tot tipus aquesta figura de l'ETSAB Visiting Studio ha estat possible, i en particular els volem agrair al Vicente Iguallar, l'arquitecte en cap de l'Ajuntament de Barcelona, l'Albert Civit i en Jaume Bernades, que avui el tenim aquí entre nosaltres com a arquitecte adjunt de l'Ajuntament de Barcelona, l'arquitecte en cap, que pugui estar avui també aquí amb nosaltres. De fet, la seva visita no és gens esporàdica perquè el veiem a la casa afortunadament amb una certa freqüència. Agrair també a la Càtedra Blanca perquè en aquest cas, a través del seu director, de l'Alberto Peñín, del Carles Ferreter, perquè han tingut també donar suport en aquest acte concretament d'avui, acadèmic i econòmic, cosa que ens va molt bé i que crec que és un suport necessari perquè puguem complementar algunes de les activitats que creiem fonamentals per l'escola en un moment de retallades que ens dona per gaires partits. Agrair també, i de manera molt sentida, al professor Carles Croses, que ha acceptat aquest singular maridatge amb la professora Anupama Kundoo. El recorregut que porta fins ara al taller no fa més que referendar que la selecció del Carles, ara que no el sentim, no va ser gaire afortunada. No és broma, va ser, creiem que era important que hi hagués un professor amb la competència del Carles perquè pogués complementar la tasca que pogués fer l'Anupama en aquest taller dels dimecres. Agrair també a la Maria que fa aquesta assistència de la seva condició de becària, a tots vosaltres, els estudiants, que intueixo que molts que esteu aquí esteu treballant aquesta esplèndida tasca que esteu duent a terme en aquest taller, i també agrair al professorat que d'una manera sistemàtica a través del primer estade em va passant a visitar-los. Em semblava important que més enllà que nosaltres com a estudiants i com darrers destinataris d'aquesta proposta acadèmica de l'escola, però que hi hagués també un conjunt de professors, preferiblement de professors joves de la casa, que poguessin també compartir aquesta experiència acadèmica i també, per què no, enriquir des del seu punt de vista la valoració que des del taller es fa de les vostres propostes. Segur que em deixo algun temps, us sabeu disculpar. Entrant en la nostra conferenciant d'avui, l'Anupama Kundoo, és una arquitecta índia, nascuda al Punt, posa en el seu mateix pàgina web, nascuda l'any 67 a l'estat de Pune, a Índia. Va estudiar a l'Escola d'Arquitectura de Bombay, va acabar els seus estudis d'arquitectura relativament jove, amb 21 anys, i posteriorment va obtenir el doctorat 20 anys després a la Universitat Tècnica de Berlín el 2008. Dir també que al llarg de tots aquests anys ha impartit la docència a un nombre notable d'universitats, d'escoles d'arquitectura internacional reconegudes, que van des de la mateixa escola doctoral, l'Escola Tècnica de Berlín, fins a l'Escola d'Arquitectura d'Amsterdam, l'Architectural Association de Londres, el Queensland de Brisbane i, en aquest moment, l'Escola d'Arquitectura de Barcelona, cosa que ens honora. Dir també que la seva activitat professional, que sempre ha compartit, i aquest és un dels aspectes que també formava part del nostre interès de poder seleccionar-la com a la persona que obre aquesta etapa de l'ETSAB Visiting Studio, és com aquesta retroalimentació de la seva competència acadèmica amb la seva activitat professional. I en aquest cas ella va obrir un estudi a la Índia l'any 1990, per tant, porta 25 anys treballant en propostes professionals, les quals avui tindrem ocasió de veure'n alguna, i que, com veureu, que no conegueu gaire la seva obra, es caracteritza per un especial èmfasi en la condició matèrica de l'arquitectura, sent especialment sensible a les condicions socioeconòmiques en les que es desenvolupa l'obra. I jo crec que això segurament és així, entre altres coses, o un dels motius pels que es pot explicar és per aquesta situació híbrida en la que rau sobre el mateix pòsit en què acaba sempre esdevenint un projecte, una formació en algunes notables escoles d'arquitectura europees, per tant, en particular refinament visual, però al mateix temps, paral·lel a aquesta formació, volcant tot això amb un entorn geogràfic com és el de la seva Índia natal, que és allò on es produeix la major part de la seva producció arquitectònica. I la barreja d'aquest tramat entre aquestes dues condicions, el de la formació i el de la geografia, dona lloc a una obra tan particular i interessant com la que acaba de veure. Jo no em vull estendre més, el que és important avui és que la puguem sentir amb ella. Simplement recordar-vos que aquest acte acadèmic pretenem que estigui construït en dues parts i a la que us convidem a participar en les dues. Per un costat, al matí hi ha aquesta lliçó, aquesta conferència de l'Anupama, i després, que és a les 3:30, comença aquest mitjull en el que intervindran també altres professores d'aquí de la casa, més enllà de poder comptar amb la presència també d'en Jaume Bernades, i serà també els professors, professores, l'Estel Ortega, la Judit Leclerc, la Cris Jové i a part de la presència continuada també de Jordi Ros. No sé si deixo algú. Jo Jorge Pérez, del Departament d'Urbanisme. Això serà a partir de les 3:30 per poder comentar aquestes propostes que veieu exposades en aquests expositors i que us convidem a tots vosaltres a assistir i a participar. Anupama, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this very flattering introduction in Catalan. I understood. No, I know it was flattering, so thank you. I'm very happy to be here because I was in the last year quite busy in the square in Raval as part of the VCN reset. And it was actually Benedetta. I'm very grateful to her that she was instrumental in bringing me to Barcelona. And I was not really finished because it takes so much time to understand the context. That's why for me the architecture process is almost more important than the product, because the process is a way of knowing more and more about the place. And this, I was very happy that this was extended for me by your invitation, that I can continue to be. I have already met Jaume at that time, and it was really great that with Vicente Guayar that this collaboration has come about, and I can interact with you all for a longer time. And during this process, I was still living in Australia, but the life circumstances also changed that I am now in Madrid. So I know that it's not the best relationship between your cities, but for me, I'm closer, so that is the main point. And so yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy every day that I come and take the train and I have time to think about what the students are doing. And I'm also very happy by now to see how the students are very engaged in the process. So I would hope that later you will have the opportunity to have some discussion about the process in our studio, because for me that is also something I thought I should experiment. Since you are trying to create a new opportunity, I felt that and with the help of Carlos, I have actually got a good support to take the risk that he is not too much afraid that what will come out of this kind of freestyle studio form. So I would like to just introduce the topic actually, which I am calling Rethinking Materiality. I want to just say that there is a lot of high-tech, flashy new things coming out every day, which is attractive for architects in terms of opportunities. But my work has, my practice is 25 years old. Now don't calculate my age, please. But, my practice got associated with many new labels throughout, but at the moment it's about material research and all that. But I want to explain that my interest in material is not that I'm not interested in the material, in fact, at all. I'm interested in the negative spaces that we have to build, because architecture occupies nothing, actually. Like what we need to build is the nothingness. They say that the function of the pot lies in the nothingness. What we use is the part we don't build. That is the important focus for me. So it is the design of the spaces, but the people are so distracted by the material that they don't realize that what we are trying to do is to craft the space. And that is the actual work. But the reason why the materiality has to be rethought is because of the incredible speed of urbanization and social transformation taking place in the cities, and the fact that so many that the world is becoming urban from rural. At the times in which I graduated, we already knew this. So and the new knowledge of environmental shortage of resources, not only affordability, not only money, but all resources. So we have to build everything without anything. So And I was in a country where I was, fortunately, it was already poor. I mean, I don't mean it was fortunate to be in a poor country, but what I mean is, for us, what you are having now, a crisis, that was the normal landscape. It was not frightening to have a crisis because we were growing up with shortage, you know. And I don't want to make it look like a social work or something, because it's just a normal architectural work in a time where this is happening in the world. And this kind of methods, I was looking for methods to be able to construct the architecture in new ways where it will become affordable in not only money terms but in environmental terms. So this is what I mean by building voids with less resources. Like there is a joke, you know, about a child who doesn't want to eat his cheese. He tells his mother, I don't like the cheese which has got holes in it. And he says, okay, you eat the cheese and you keep the holes aside, you know. Or this is a way to think about what is a material and not material. And there is another one. How do you make a fishing net? You take a lot of holes and you tie them together. That's the answer. So my focus throughout the material research is not to have material for its own sake. The material research is required because the way we have created habits to build after industrialization, there is no future in that. You know, there is a dead end, and like in the Titanic, at least in the movie, you know, the people are still having champagne because they don't want to believe that this is really true, you know, or climate change and all. You think, oh, it's like the dinosaur, we don't know if it exists, you know, it's like an element of fiction because the daily life is constructed in these habits. So for me, when I graduated already then, I thought that I was not depressed, and I want you all to be not depressed in the crisis, because when there is a problem, even so big as the Ciudad Meridiana, you know, it's a question of being creative. It's an opportunity to be able to be efficient with the design and to build with less. And that for me was a challenging creative thing. It was not like, oh, I'm so poor, I have nothing, and you know, not at all. When I can build something with much less, I feel a fantastic challenge as a designer. And I think I started thinking that low cost is not only for the poor people, it's for everybody, because it's good design. If you can achieve with less, it's fantastic. So I would like to inspire you in that way. And our project, which we are working here, is called Made in Ciudad Meridiana, because our main problem is to be able to try to the poverty that is part of the problem. It needs to be included in the design response. Otherwise, the designs will remain on the paper, you know. So we want to offer them something where people can, many of them have a lot of time and no jobs. So we want to think how can we use them in many levels. And I hope you will find it in all our student works as a common strategy. But because of that topic, I want to show, I thought of starting the one video. Because I worked in many contexts where people were able to participate. So you don't have to think this is India or how does this apply. I just want to explain how exciting it is when you have to create with new materials which you don't know anything about. This was in fact a very luxury project, very high cost project, but I wanted some communities to benefit from this project. So there's a small video. So I just want to say that, in this case, the project was a very luxury project because we had to exhibit handmade products of designers. They wanted to invite designers like Prada and, they want to, there's an organization based in Milan, they want to do this kind of exhibition in Japan and many countries because there is a fear that that we will forget how to make things with hand. And we keep on talking about industrialization, but post-industrialization we realize that it has led to people not having work. Every practice like this that is done by machines, the people who do it, they cannot hear anymore. There are many problems of over-industrialization, and they are trying to promote to make with the hand. So the people who, in this case, the idea was that when you make something yourself, that you don't forget how to stitch a button on your shirt, even if you get it ready-made, or that you don't forget how to make a cake just because you can buy it ready. If we stop making with our hand, what is the impact on the society and the mind that if the automatic knowledge we have of geometry when you fold paper or you do simple things, if you don't do it anymore, what is the damage to society? This is the reason behind this project, and it was a luxury project. And the video is very slow to show how difficult it is to make things, but to tell people that if you don't have to surrender to the standard product in the catalog. If it is good for you, you use it. If it's not good for you, don't be limited by the module that somebody designed because of their machine size and all of that. You have to always focus on what you want, and the machines should follow, the technology should follow that, not the other way around. So otherwise we will be not realizing what we are actually creating for the future. So I just thought of showing that because of the idea of made in, which we are now carrying forward. I want to just begin to summarize what I said to understand the context of my work. So it was not only India, which was a very, very rural country, which is rapidly becoming urban, but the whole world is actually, by now, it has been clearly accepted that urbanization is the biggest worry for everybody in global terms, is the fact that we are urbanizing so fast that we don't have the time to do the infrastructure. Like in the times when Europe and America were urbanizing, we had a different context. We did not have the speed. We did not have anything close to, we had no knowledge of the environmental problems of resources. So we have very new conditions today, and we are not able to manage it. And on top of it, the population is increasing in so many countries that is another worry on the resources. And in places like India, where the population is so much compared to the land it occupies, for me it was like a good opportunity to develop what they are calling green buildings. In those days we did not have these names, but what was important was that I didn't believe we should follow the world's standard, the global standards of construction, because if you calculate that every Indian, every Chinese and every African should have the same life, we need about 6 planets, which we don't have. So it is a very simple fact that if everybody has to get a piece of the cake, then there is not enough cake. And then if you came late to the party, you have no cake. So it's too bad, but you cannot ask for the same piece that the people who came in the beginning in the party, they had, So we have to invent a way we can still have the party without the same resources. So if you see these examples about all over the world, this kind of buildings, it could be in Singapore, Dubai, wherever, in any climate, this is being promoted all over India. Because the GDP is high, it looks like the country is doing well, but in reality, you can see down, you see there is a pig and a cow. It's like a rural area on which a city is forced. So, automatically, you see there are 3 skylines in this picture. There is a middle skyline, which is just a ad hoc growing thing at the normal pace. Then people are planning big cities and this globalization related offices and so on, creating such a high demand that to build that, you have to create slums, because otherwise the numbers don't work. Because you cannot, if you pay everybody the way you should, you don't manage. And the fact is that housing for all is a very difficult thing in today's time. You know, if you see UN Habitat and all these numbers, 30% of the people are without houses. And it is growing and growing and growing. It's not a problem only of Ciudad Meridiana, it's a problem to afford. The standard we have created of housing today is unaffordable. Even if you take a bank loan and if you're 100% employed, you still cannot pay a house. You cannot even pay the rent, and you have to keep on living with your parents. This is not, something has to be reworked drastically on the governance side, but also on this. Maybe we have to think if the standard position for the housing, maybe is it too high? Because in the olden days, everybody had a house because they all built their own houses in the vernacular times. Now we make it, the technology, impossible that everyone can build. Only some people can build. Even to paint a wall is expensive now, because you have to pay the people who have a degree for everything, you know. So we have to think, rethink means really rethink on all the levels. Otherwise, we cannot just go and, we will not make any change. So this kind of thinking, that the housing for all, that if people who have full-time job, they cannot have a house, what about the one who don't have a job? So how can we build that we can actually provide a house to everybody? And one of the main reasons for thinking about what people build, I'm talking to my students here, is not because they are poor and all, because people used to build their house, you know, and now if they would be able to, if we use the work, you know, construction generates employment. So if we can think, if we design the technology that is more user-friendly, then maybe we can have a better chance to meet this problem. So this kind of urban form from the equal, when I grew up in Bombay, it was more or less a line. Now I go to Bombay, in these years it's become like that, you know. And not only Bombay, it's all the countries where cities are happening in the future. Slums has become synonymous with urbanization today. Because all the countries where urbanization is taking place have got slums. Why? Because you have to build so many houses for the people who are going to come. And the immigration problem which Ciudad Meridiana had has the same problem. Because you cannot have you already left a house and you came, and you have to make a house. It's impossible to pay that. It's only more complex now that they have even no jobs. So, on top of it, all the materials and the technologies that we have now invented, we have thrown away all the richness of so many traditions and knowledge to build. And now everybody has to know only one thing, to do reinforced concrete, otherwise they cannot participate. Or more complex things than that, like aluminium and so on. But, so like this combination, for me, affordability is not about economic affordability. It is for all resources, you know, and the earth's resources. So environmental issues, automatically our concern, what kind of habitat can we afford to build for the future? And so that's why, that was the background. And when I started my practice in 1990, okay, because I already knew all this by studying, I didn't want to work. At that time I was very idealistic and very innocent. I didn't realize how much, today I don't know, I would be maybe, it's more hard to take risk. I did not realize the risk I was taking at that time, because I was just graduated and did not listen to people who said this won't work and that won't work. I was just doing whatever I want. So when I went from Bombay to live in a rural area, and I got my first project, I was already living in a simpler way, and I realized that the concrete houses of my friends, when I would visit them, they were more hot and uncomfortable than the huts of coconut thatch in which I lived, because I could only afford that, because I left my parents' home. So that is my personal affordability story. But then I wanted, for me, I think life is temporary. I don't mind which house and all. I just mind what kind of life I had and what I do with my time, you know. So I try to have an office at all costs, you know. simple office, but not to stop to be an architect. That was my only thing, and I lived simply on all the levels, So I started to work on developing roofing systems because I had a French client who asked me to do a house, and I told him, he was all the time treating me like it's my first project and he's helping me, this kind of behavior. So I told him, okay, I make a compromise. I compromise on some other points, but you let me make whatever roofing experiment I want. Then don't say anything about the roof, okay? That was my deal. So with that, and I didn't realize, I had so many reasons to be afraid, but I really did not know how to do all this myself. So you see my picture, I have put it for the sake of the students here, this is how I was. You see, I don't know, you can see in my face what I don't know. And I saw what the people in the area who were potters, they were able to do this, and they don't have jobs and all that. And I was thinking how to use what is there, because it was a rural area, otherwise why to import from the city. There's going to be a truck to bring the cement, and then the first truck who makes the first way, that will become a highway little by little, because nobody plans anything in India. Then that will become the track, then it will become somebody will put concrete, and So I was trying to do local. So I found out, and I was trying to figure out with the people in full scale, to some extent, to develop this efficient. I was always thinking of using geometry and engineering knowledge to achieve efficiency, because I think form follows technology to some extent. So it was very important that the people in my team, they understand and help me, because I didn't know many things, So I thought if you do in full scale, then your whole team, the masons and everybody, they can understand about engineering. And so just to be like a team, I was sharing everything and doing in this way, instead of working in my computer. We already had AutoCAD, by the way, at that time. It was new to have AutoCAD. So this house, the first house with ferrocement, which you see later, which I'm still researching, it was a combination of a climatic response and and by the way, I have to tell you, since I commented about the media and how they put all labels on your work to some of you, at this time they told me, I had not yet gone to Germany, but they were saying, oh, she has a very Bauhaus aspect, because I was like a modernist actually, because in my aesthetic sense, I don't like to have clutter, and I was already influenced by rational, I prefer to have rational and poetic combination, in my expression. But after that, I realized through the maintenance, I realized what happens to this kind of white walls in tropical climates and all this. Although white, I used it to cool the house, but then because of the monsoon and all that, I started to find ways to build with other materials where the deterioration will not be noticed so much. So immediately they call me vernacular from that moment. I will show you a little bit later. They call me, where they start to change my label. So from the Bauhaus, it went to traditional architect. But I see the same continuity in my research. So at that time, I myself had to build an affordable house and for myself. So I built a hut, which I saw that majority people were living in huts. And for me, I was like, I came from a big city in Bombay, so for me it was quite exotic actually. And in the beginning I didn't, now I know all the problems of it, but at that time it was like a bit like Mowgli in the Jungle Book, living in the forest and enjoying charming life and all that, snakes, everything. And but there was an Australian architect called John Allen who had developed some kind of more improvement on the form of building in this kind of houses lifted from the ground. That was his first innovation. So having seen some of those and lived, and my house was very much inspired and based on what he had done. But so that was my simple life. You see my motorbike, which I was very proud of, and my I didn't need much, and I had a solar panel on the roof, and I had two lights which I used to carry in different places with a long wire, and I had a music system from the car. So I had that self-sufficient Now they will say it was a green architecture. But that time it was a common sense thing to do. So this is how I lived. I landed up, I thought it's for 2-3 years, how long will it last? I lived here for 10 years. So of course, living in this simple way, it has definitely, more than any theories, it has influenced me and to realize that if your inside of your life is good, you don't need so much on the outside actually, if you are satisfied with your life in general. So it's not everything about, you can live in many ways, you know. And for me it was a personal learning experience. And so that was part of my house. And then I did a few projects where these kind of ideas were applied, for example, for a yoga resort that some clients were trying to make. But later, this is an example from how these kind of experiences or experiments reconnect again and again in academia. When I was teaching at AA, they had the final year diploma project was located in Hope Park, where some Prioto structures were there, and it was kind of, that was their focus of their project. And it was a forest of very straight looking trees. But if you look at that sculpture, that installation that Andy Goldsworthy has done in the gates, you realize that idea of form follows technology, or whatever, you know, looking for to make a nest out of the same lines that you see, you know. So I'm always looking for the forms that come out of the material and that can generate the architectural form. And there's so many expressions possible, but this was an interesting inspiration because I had taken the students then to India later because of that forest where they were trying to use round wood for construction. Because in round wood, you know what happens is you don't have to use a cut section. If you cut a timber, then you're wasting all the round thing around. So your tree has to be so big, it has to be 20 years to cut out one section like that. But if you take the same cross section when it's young, in 3 years you can cut that. So Prioto and a group of people were asked to develop building techniques for that area. So I thought I'll take the students to dismantle, to demystify the Prioto things on the site, took them to India to do workshops, to do a 10-day workshop where, you know, I believe a lot in this kind of direct engagement in the teaching, to teach through full scale, contact to reality, to real material, real people, real site, and real, I forgot, there are 4 things normally. People, whatever, I will tell you if it comes back. But basically, I think that architecture is real. Whether you think it's abstract and poetic and whatever it is also real. And the realness of architecture, if you lose that, then you can become irrelevant, I think, in the future. And that's why in the Biennale, I did a project and I told David Chipperfield that my response will be in full scale, because architecture must not be represented in another way, especially in today's time, because it's going off in some other level of fiction. So I wanted it can be poetic, but you must inhabit that with your body scale, and then you can write about it. You cannot just paste things from articles and keep on making theories without experiencing in full scale. So that is something I argued, because in full scale, the architecture is a synthesis of so many aspects of technology, of material, of human ergonomics and climate and everything. Only in the real scale, the synthesis can come together in a balance. Otherwise, any aspect you talk about, even of technology in my work, it's not the true picture. The synthesis is the main thing. So to teach I often try to do full scale experiments with the students. In 10 days, they were given a toolkit of everything in 1:50 scale. Of all the materials we bought, we made it into 1:50 scale, and they had a box. And they had to make a tower for the botanical garden, a watchtower, as tall as they can, for people to climb up to be able to see the animals and the plants. And finally, one person won this, and we had all built it. So it's just a 10-day thing, but you do this kind of construction, you have never built anything with your hands, and I don't like to also do it in the style of the design-built things that are going on everywhere, where you have to go and make all the mud bricks for half a year, like, to keep on struggling. I feel we are architects. I want to confront them with the reality only to remain a designer, not to become a carpenter or to become a mason or whatever. I only want them to know, and therefore I support this program always with the people who know how to do, because I want the highest excellence and not to reduce it to what the people are now going to be able to do here. So it's a support from many people in the team, and to make them connected. So in the future, some of the future projects, there were a little more different representation or slight improvement. Sometimes the innovations upon traditional way of doing things is a very subtle innovations that you don't even notice that there is a change, and that's why this kind of designing could be very subtle and invisible also. For example, instead of using a lot of wood to support the coconut leaves, there is some wire holding those coconut leaves. So it's a kind of hybrid between high-tech and low-tech, because today we are living in times where I believe that there has to be a negotiation between how much high-tech and low-tech you go. Because it's not about high-tech or low-tech. Because earlier it was a formula. Developed countries, high-tech. Developing countries, low-tech. It's not like that. I think in every project to project, I negotiate how much should be the degree to be appropriate between high-tech and low-tech. So these are the kind of things that I started doing, where even to replace industrially made ceramic tiles, using pigments, even the pigments, this is a earth pigment from the surrounding earth, to infuse it in the cement. There's a lot of experimentation to make this kind of floors, to simplify the standard, but it's all made locally. So these are some of those houses, matching the palette with the colors, with the wood. So by the time, after those 10 years passed in the hut, and I was thinking about a new place, in between I had done some work in Germany, and I had thought I will keep the money. More than having another house, it was to be able to build another set of experimental constructions where I don't have to convince the clients to do some radical things. So in my own house, it is a mix, I had to compose the house out of many techniques that I wanted to test. But this is called wall house. One of the principal things here was that I wanted to make these bricks that you see are not the modern bricks. These are the pre-industrial bricks that were made in that area. And by the way, this is where they started calling me vernacular and traditional and all that. Somebody also called it contemporary vernacular. There's now one more term about that. So what I thought was that my knowledge was increasing about sustainability measures and rating and all that. So I was not in agreement of all the great green rating systems where they dismiss bricks because they say it consumes so much energy, it consumes so much fuel to burn the brick that it's not sustainable. But brick is the first building material that people have ever manufactured, and it has still today performed well. So it's not a thing to be dismissed just because of some new rating. And what I found out is I am uncomfortable because they make the brick have a standard energy unit when they measure. They don't talk about the quality of the energy. Like if I am burning the brick with the coconut shells or with coal, it's the same for them. It shouldn't be. There has to be a qualitative rating. If a man is cycling and producing the orange juice, it's a different energy spent than if it was electrical. So it must be more about quality and social response to how a thing is achieved, and not only about just a physical number. So in this house, I was trying to prove that if you use the local bricks, which are very weak, they are like the Roman brick size, very thin, very weak, hardly there's any strength, and the lime mortar is almost stronger than the cement, than the brick itself. But I was trying to prove that if you use a local brick, which is made in your own area in this way, it's much more healthy than to try to chase the factory-made brick, which is going to make quarries, which is going to use coal, which is you know. So I wanted to revive this kind of brick, which they were still making in the area. They were using it to fix the old heritage buildings, and for making some ceilings. But I thought if you make the walls thicker, because the brick is weaker, it's even good for the insulation and everything. So I did this whole house to revive this technique. Later on, this house became most famous because somebody published it internationally, and then everybody wants to only publish the same one again and again and again. And that's why I actually, when I was invited by David Chipperfield in the last Biennale, I decided to build the same house in full scale for reasons which I will now explain. But anyway, this is that negotiation of high-tech and low-tech that I'm talking about, that here there is a ceiling with we were testing that aluminium corrugated thing for some other project. There were so many ideas that were being tested here, including the plan where there is much more outdoor spaces in a tropical climate than indoor spaces. It's a small house. This granite slabs which you see are from the video before. These are the people who are making grinding stones. They know how to make everything flat, and they only know how to do that. So we were using some of these kind of locally available things to build this kind of spaces. And in the windows as well. Just like in winter and summer, you can change your sweater. You can regulate also the skin of the building in a simple way, not only in a high-tech way, because otherwise it's comfortable in one season and it's not comfortable in the rest of the year. So there are two windows. There is a wooden frame. You use it with a mesh when it's the mosquito season, when there is, and there's too much glare. You use that. You use the glass when it's raining and it's dark, so you need more light. So this kind of simple approaches. And I had got attached to my hut to have the bathroom in the open air, because you get the sun inside and it is very clean by the sun, like disinfected. So I got used to it, so I tried to keep it in the house later. So this dining table was made out of a single log tree. It was all made with wooden joints. The ceiling is a way to reduce, to save 30% of steel, like a filler slab, by using loss shuttering, because high energy, like clever slabs like Diagrid and all these systems are not used because of expensive formwork. Usually people are not using a lot of efficient engineering systems because of that. So I am also researching with formwork, and here using very cheap planks, using mud as a layer to find level, so that when you wash it out later, you have a smooth concrete. So then you can spray and wash the mud out, and then you have a level thing, instead of trying to invest in a very heavy-duty metal structure. So all these kind of innovations, if you want to call them, or research with material, actually started to go deeper and deeper, because I realized that there are simple ways of doing things and you can get a better result. And so during that time, sometimes, like this is a housing, very, very low-cost housing, made out of rammed earth. And sometimes you notice there is brick with rammed earth, because sometimes we were not able to afford the shuttering, to have 2-3 sets of that to build simultaneously. So here we are also finding out the exact economics with which we can finally achieve the cheapest solution, And then these are some projects where this was called Urban Eco Community. It was a housing project for which I had then got the Housing Award in India, because it was using very low-cost techniques, trying to get this aesthetic of the concrete, but with rammed earth and large panels of rammed earth, because the earth is what was excavated from the wastewater treatment plant, where the water was all recycled and all that. So this is that housing project. It involved the people. I have not only positive memories, but also some negative memories to be very honest, when you do co-housing and all that, it can be a nightmare. Because everybody wants to decide everything. If you let them decide something, then everybody wants to have a meeting about what height should be the toilet seat, for example. So it's not to be only glamorized, Now if I do one more project like this, I will tell them, you do your job, I am going to do my job, but you don't do my job and I don't do your job. This I learned very well with a very big prize. And then these are similar systems, you see the imperfections because if it's handmade, this is again a high-tech, low-tech solution because the speed of construction is also important. So you need the high-tech for the speed more than anything else. So this is a kind of a prefabricated jack arch type system in which, and behind you see the first ramlet which was done in my own house. Didn't come out so good, but there was also an engineer, there's an architect who has got an earth laboratory there, so you can get your soil tested. Subprint. He offers this consultancy, so we can get quite a high standard by now. And then these kind of things, like the regular corridors and a lot of spaces, I make them open, like open streets, so that you make connection between people on higher levels as well. And these holes, because the streets are detached from the wall, it helps for the ventilation and creates a higher draft for the air circulation. So, this is some of these projects. So now here, you see some of those ideas being placed wherever it's relevant in other places. Sometimes there are combinations of different technologies according to what is found. These are some of my current projects. But one of the more radical experimentations I did is a technique in which mud houses are built with earth, only earth, and filled with earth bricks and other, like a kiln, to treat the house as a kiln, and then to fire the whole thing together. So when the house is cooked, it becomes earth. It's called baked in situ mud construction, very radical. All the money spent on labor almost, and nothing on material because it is only for places where the earth is good enough to use as a brick. But this is an idea pioneered by Ray Meeker, a Californian potter. I did my PhD on this kind of topics, measuring the relevance of what happens when the house becomes a consumer, not a consumer of materials, but a producer of building materials. And how the socio-economic dimension changes if the brick is not brought to the fire, but the fire is brought to the house. What changes in the whole thing? So, all kinds of ceramic products are used a lot in architecture, whether it's tiles, toilets, wash basin, drainage pipes, all of that could be produced inside. Normally in a kiln, 40% of the energy goes into the walls, and you can use that. That was his idea. So, this is an orphanage we were building. Sometimes you're using any material that we find to be absorbing them in the construction and buying one thing less. So, and you'll see a lot of students around in all the projects, because I also believe that you don't have to know something fully and then you teach it to the student like a ready-made thing. There's no time for that. The students have to directly, the parts which I already know, I can do it in my practice. The parts which we want to find out, we do it in the school. So it's a research project where the students, we share what we don't know and we look for the answers together. So we don't have to be on the two sides, the student and the teacher, because by investigating, we become empowered by the knowledge we acquire. So the whole house is cooked for 3 or 4 days, and then we take out the bricks and sell. So the toilet blocks and some areas I made it out of, bottles, and the dome and some parts out of glass. Sometimes, their things are cheaper if you don't buy it in the material catalog, but in the normal domestic sector. So, we've done all this kind of very hybrid techniques to be able to build that orphanage without any funding, basically. So this is the project in Venice, where, because I had seen that it's a brick city, and wherever you go, you see the bricks behind the plaster, because it's an architecture of ruins. You notice how it was made. So I like to carry this idea, and you see the patchwork of different bricks over different time and how the civilization was evolving. You see it all in the walls. And when this space was given to me, it was a huge, my installation was the biggest one in that year, and they gave me this space, and I found a lot of parallel. If you look at the catenary vault shape of the arch there, and the ceiling in terracotta using a lot of wood. My ceiling will be there without any structure, without any support structure because it's an arch. And those kind of things I wanted to place it together and to make this point in common ground. The theme was common ground. My point was that we are together commonly in the building technologies. We are evolving the technology collectively. You know, everybody is building another layer on top of what was known, and you know, it's the same bricks. You know, that were being made from the first technology in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa is still being made in Africa and India. So, and now maybe it is irrelevant again, that knowledge. So I was trying to use this occasion to document all the things that I did not document, not realizing how maybe some of it was very relevant for the future. So that is what I brought here, and I made all of this again. We made everything, we revisited the house 20 years later. We built everything again, so we documented, see how they are cooking this out of coconut shells, and we brought this experience, you know, like the people who make lime, this was all authentic material brought from India to show that architecture is actually very site-specific, but I also wanted to show that we can make everything belong if you're a good architect. I wanted to show that an architecture which looks totally irrelevant to Venice can fit perfectly as if it was always there. That's what I wanted to show. And that to show that we are not so different, we are already common. We just think we are very different, but actually it's the perspective. So we packaged all this. So we took 3 trucks of materials. I was in Australia. We took all this for research and investigation. People from Italy, people from Australia, people from India, all of them came there. And the students practically built everything in a matter of 6 to 8 weeks. And we had to design the foundation because there's no place for foundation. So all the technologies were designed according to what the students will be able to make. And these Indian craftsmen who had worked, some of them on my house assisting, they were going to Venice for the first time, leaving their village, you know. And so, you know, this project for me was to show, in the end it was something poetic, but the reality and the work that goes into it and the rigor of architecture is represented also. In the process is also represented, you know. See, the people could not even understand sometimes, they have no common language, they have different building standards. Like in engineering, the engineers were not giving me permission to make the bolts, you know, because they were afraid of certain, they had their own reasons to be concerned according to the factor of safeties and things allowed in their cities. But it was very interesting, I thought, for the common ground theme, because the center of the gravity force is the same in all our countries. And my buildings are already standing there for so long. But still it's not allowed in some places. Some places they don't allow the calculation, some places they don't allow us to without the helmet. He doesn't need it, you know, he's only, but in Australia you have to do it. It's like that. So I was saying my whole building is made in a safe way with the hand. We don't need that much, we don't have to look upon construction as only a dangerous thing because we are also doing it softly. But the Indians also learned that they are not protecting themselves in some areas where they should. So it was a kind of exchange of the process. Here you see the students are learning to build the same floor, and it was incredible and ambitious to build such a thing. It was very expensive. See, there's an Australian engineer. They are making us put wire here, which we did not do before. We did it so that they will be happy. And here we did some other things. We made some part of the roofs with wine bottles, you know, by interlocking them to learn more things. But the most important thing was there was this dialogue between our walls and the original existing walls, and the architecture of the ruin was a setting as if it's a site, as if the pillars are the trees, you know, it was carefully situated, and the architecture itself was an unfinished architecture, which, like the ruin, it also reveals the construction. It was in the same degree, so you didn't know which was part of which, in a way, and the idea was to create a common ground also literally between that project and this project. You know, you look up, you see the terracotta, you see the other layer of terracotta, and you see the time in which this was made and that was made. but yeah, the dining table was brought here, and we had a opening party, and it was just like building the whole house with the water bodies, landscape, and everything. Okay, now I explained you about ferrocement in that, so I'm skipping this, but and I don't want to make it very long. But what I want to say is that one of the things I want to mention before I end is that right now for affordable housing, low-cost housing, and even in Ciudad Meridiana we will build anything more, I am following up on the research of Nervi's work with ferrocement since many years, because it's a much more efficient structure than concrete. And I'm right now working with a German collaboration on some building prefab elements. But I'm also working with origami and forms, how paper has been stiffened through this kind of culture of origami. We were using some of those as a starting point to be able to strengthen thin sheets with folding patterns so that we can make cheap formwork, which are corrugated paper formwork, which you can fold and carry and take it to the site and put it up. And the structure itself can also be built using very thin, very thin steel with nearly nothing. So this is one of the projects I'm currently researching in India. And I'm skipping this because I showed you the video. And I just want to mention that for those of you who don't know, that when I came here to collaborate with IAC, on the Library of Lost Books, part of Reset, we were investigating how the books are becoming like a waste material. The libraries, even here, I have to burn the books, really, even in Barcelona. So because there is too many books and nobody is reading, things are getting digital, people are overproducing. So I told them to just rethink about the new library of the future, where people are not going to go there to exchange books anymore. So what will be the future like? How is going to be the form of a library in a city? Exchange of knowledge without books. At the same time, there is all these books they collect, everyone donates books, so what will be? It was just also for fun, because in the museum, in Museo Eco in Madrid, they had at that time invited me to make an installation and a workshop with students, and I thought that tell them to pretend that this is a fictitious country and the only material which they have in the cellar is old catalogs which they have to destroy, and this is our only building material. You can make your models with that, you can make everything. And they made a lot of construction techniques, but they made these wonderful sofas, because in this direction the book is very strong and in the other direction it's very soft. So but behind there were many more techniques. But for the installation, what I did is to symbolically promote the idea of reading, because I think education makes you free, and in the same thing in Ciudad Meridiana, I think education, that's why my project is called Building Knowledge. It's a knowledge about building, but we are building knowledge about how to build in a new way. And to prolong, so I wanted my installation to be a very subtle installation, because the city was very afraid what will happen in Raval, and they were always telling me, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, because they didn't want to allow to put spaces that could be misused by people. So I finally decided to make trees like canopies by using the technique of preserving jamón, which I thought that it is an everyday household object. So if I do something invisible that doesn't look very flashy, it's a subtle idea to preserve the book, to extend its life. And so we used it, and of course we have to also make it waterproof to use outside. So we made trees out of this at the Filmoteca, and from outside you could see the outside of the books, and from inside it's a very subtle suggestion to read. And it was very nice that some people used to see people coming to do their homework in the evenings, being in this place, using the place, and we were very fortunate that there were no such incidents. In fact, all these shops around, they used to come and carry these books on their own. They were repairing some of them. People were, happy to have that space. And also it was not I didn't want to make a very loud installation. I want to be very invisibly, just support with a little shade in that place, so that the people won't even feel like destroying what we have produced. So, and the last slide is to just tell you that recently, it's still going on, in the Milan Triennale, I have was invited, there were 8 architects who were asked to give visions for a new city in Africa. And that I had proposed this project where we reverse a lot of trends in the way we build cities, so I don't want to explain about that, but I just want to mention that that is my latest work that is now being exhibited in Milan. And to have most of the city in very low-tech, but the high-tech aspects concentrated in a manner where the footprint, it's a merging of the bottom-up and the top-down approaches, because I think both are required. Anyway, so with that, I would like to end the talk, and excuse me if it was too long, but if you have questions, please, I don't know, do we have time for that? Well,
I sometimes think that our culture is perhaps lacking this traditional architecture you are discussing in India. It is very straightforward. Okay. Now, in our culture, sometimes it feels like vernacular architecture has been dissolved over the appearance of new elements and new technologies. For example, concrete concrete structures seem also almost familiar to the culture here. So my concern is, I very much like the idea you proposed of embracing traditional techniques and vernacular architecture into hybrid projects. But my concern is that I find it hard to visualize which is the actual traditional architecture other than more straightforward elements.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I must tell you that what you have seen in my work, I was feeling the same as you when I came out of college. It's not what I saw in Bombay, any of this, nothing of this. And now, because the people are involved, it looks like it is more traditional. That's why they start to call me also, you see, remember my first project and later. But what I want to say is that I am also not, when I did that, showed you the earlier video and that project, I am not attached to the ancient handmade projects. I am really not attached to the tradition. I am a very modern person in my outlook. I don't mind if those spots disappear from the land. What I do mind is the intelligence of how to do it. If that disappears, I am concerned. I like to not lose the capacity to do things. I don't mind. So for me, it was not about the technology to continue with a traditional or nostalgia. I'm not at all into nostalgia. I am only interested if people are not able to afford a good life because the technology is alienating them. The mass production and the standardization, even here, is alienating them from being able to afford to at least have a house. Either they have that standard of house or they have no house. So I want to contribute in this. What I have actually done beyond the technology is that the people, through their work, they have a house. So for me, it's a question about involving them and not about involving that vernacular thing that I saw. Because the vernacular things which are dying out, they go out because of a natural need. It's evolution. We don't need that, it goes to something else. But sometimes we are very unconscious and we throw the baby with the bath water. You know what I mean? This expression that you are throwing, bathtub. So while you throw the water after the bath, you also throw the baby. This is the expression. It means that along with the things which are no more useful, sometimes we are also throwing something which was useful. And this I want to not throw the baby. No?
No, just you wait very much for the very speech. It was great. And in a way, first, on behalf of White Chair, in a way, that is also collaborating in this speech, I think that I have just maybe it's a very obvious question. Actually, White Chair is somehow dedicated to concrete, or to White Chair. Of course, it's a material, and also its production is not really the most.
Yes? No, yeah, I was saying from the white chair that is somehow dedicated to concrete. Not thinking about concrete, but the other day there was a Congress of World Sustainable Construction here in Barcelona, where the topic was also this challenge you have mentioned of the how to face this urban, how everybody can. How we can divide the cake, everybody can eat or participate in the party. So, and at that time, I was also considering the idea of the concrete. You were mentioning that when you produce the bricks, also the production has some heat. Cement has also this problem, of course, much bigger. But there are some research with high technology in order to reduce all that. After the idea would be, of course, other concepts of sustainability, like the print of ecological print, etc. My question would be, I think all this work as research is fantastic, and how, of course, we can extend this reflection in a way to the challenge of the mass production. Because, of course, we face those huge slums. And how we can make everybody participate in the party through those research.
No, I totally agree with you that, and that's why I'm talking about negotiating high tech and low tech, because I think it is a time that we have to have formulas for both. And in both, even in developing countries and developed countries, we have to incorporate the other, because informality is another very big concern in everywhere. It is forcing its way into every sector, even in developed countries, that informality has been included. But coming back to concrete, I think even the cement companies, and even in India, I mean, basically they acknowledge that there is not enough energy to produce cement and concrete for everything, but we must keep it judiciously for the ones where we cannot do without it. So it's not a question of not using cement. My research, actually the ferrocement research is a cement research. It is because it's a way to use it more judiciously. It is a way to think and use it carefully, where not everything is taken up by the steel. A lot of the stability comes by the form, by the design of the form. So, because we are doing an efficient form, we can use a little less steel. And we are also, there is, in the collaboration which I'm talking about, it's going to be with Mike Schleich. Do you know Schleich, Weberman and partner? Yes. So, because with them, they are doing lightweight, they are doing bridges and all that. So they are also looking at optic fibers and other, even natural, I want them to look at jute and natural fibers to put inside the cement so that it is long lasting and it can be thin. Steel makes us have a very fat cover around it. So definitely concrete and cement is, in fact, I would love to have a sponsor from the cement company. I have already got an award, 2 awards for that housing. It was cement, white cement and JK cement from India. So the cement people are not aware, like Holcim, about their bad reputation, and they would like to promote themselves as more judicious users of cement. So if they have technologies where cement continues to be used, like in the filler slab and all that, these are more intelligent ways to use the same thing by using a lot less, so that more cement remains available for the parts in the rural area where it cannot reach, because we cannot produce enough in many countries. So I think it's, and the reason I'm researching prefabricated ferrocement is because of prefabrication, because I want to find a combination of handmade, machine-made and prefabrication, because we have to build very fast now, so it has, all the work has to be produced elsewhere, not in the building site. So that's the kind of inquiry that I'm working with.
Of course, congratulations for your work, very exciting. Imagine having a slide you show something really familiar for us, the Catalan book.
Yes.
And this Catalan book is linked with handcraft people who had this knowledge. But little by little, this person, these people, are disappearing in our construction world. So, Catalan role in this moment is still.
But it's very interesting because John Oxendorf, and in fact I had sent you a flyer, no? And the Guastavino, there is a foundation. I'm very interested to connect with them. I had sent Alberto the flyer. I would love to be there. I think they are inviting research on that, or proposals from people. I would love to meet the people in the jury, in fact, because they I met John Oxendorf, and he's in MIT. I met him long ago because he had appreciated the kind of hold. But the thing is that in the Guastavino technique, they depend on thin tiles which are sticking to each other in 3 layers. And that knowledge which you're saying is lost, but it has not only been revived to a great extent. There is a beautiful flyer. I can send you a copy of the Guastavino Walk in New York. You can see all the tall buildings in a huge spans that he has achieved inside, and it is very relevant. People think it's not relevant in the future architecture form, but it can be absolutely included. But there is also Peter Rich. Peter Rich, the South African. He was recently here. He was in Barcelona, I think, a few days ago, in fact. Also, I met him in Madrid before. So he's doing a lot of things in Africa, exactly based on the Guastavino thing. Then there is Peter Block, I think. No, I don't know, it's Peter. But there are a few people. I would like to be connected with them because I've done so much research on the compressive structures for my own project that I am interested to continue in researching this. It would be great if you have a space here to do more research for that kind of thing.
In more extension, so it reminds me of an interview some years ago of Cesar, that he explained that he had this changing in his architecture because he couldn't find the people to produce that technique. So the old houses he projected and built near Porto, he said now it will be impossible to produce again because that people have been disappeared. And I don't know how do you think it would be possible to follow this interactive way in another place, or even changing the scale.
Yes.
So that he said, that now I have more steps, he said, and my architecture is changing the scale. For example, we started to working with Berlin and other places, and how these other scales have an obstacle to intellectual produce the same sensibility as control.
No, and for me also, it's not that whatever I have done is relevant to that context, And my intention is not to, I don't have a formula, and I don't believe architects should work like that, to search and to always do like that, I mean, the solution has to come out of the problem of the place, and we have not to be so attached to anything that we can be disloyal to the true solution. So I think, but what I just realized is that in this project also, which we are now doing with Ciudad Meridiana, is not to be, the main thing I want to say, the common thing I would like to carry, is not the technology, but the conviction that people can do anything. There is a particular institution, there is some economic practices, there's some, but if we don't have it, and if that institution and that practice is not serving us, we can create what needs to serve us. So in that way, because a lot of my projects which look impossible have been realized, so I can believe totally that Ciudad Meridiana can be changed. And if this is not affordable, let us try something else. If this is not affordable, let's try something else. So, not to be discouraged, because when we actually do find a solution, if we find a solution, then it will be relevant to all of Barcelona. That will be the beauty when you have a problem, when you have a big problem somewhere, and if you can manage to solve it, then it becomes relevant to the rest of the city. It can redefine new ways of doing things, it can inspire other countries. So I think in that is the thing I would like to bring forward rather than any formula from any previous project. I just wanted to ask something, no?
Well, it has to do with the previous, so maybe I'm a bit
No,
late.
it's okay.
And it's very particular. And at this event, the 48 open house, I went to the little Guastarino theater in Maresme, in Vilassar de Dalt, and I agree with Jordi that craftsmanship is disappearing. But there it was quite the opposite. There were the people who have built, on one hand, the model scale 1 to 10 and 1 to 5. No, not 1 to 10, sorry, 1 to 5 and 1 to 2 of the different pieces or kinds of walls. But then they also had done a bigger piece just to explain the technique, and they had done that with some help and calculations by a professor at Valles school, etc., etc. And these people, they have a little factory, are absolutely desperate because they have very much times got in touch with architects, and the architects are enthusiastic and we will do that, and at the end nothing comes out of that. So that also happens, no? That there is this relation, maybe also provoked because of the difficulty we have to follow all the rules. No? So if you have to do, even themselves, they were telling me, well, we would have done this a bit different, but the architect said. And maybe the architect said because he also knows that to go through all the tests and checks and whatever, no? You have to do things different. So to put all that together, no? The legal aspects, the calculation, our awful building rule norm, etc.
No, I think that when we have to do anything new, whatever you described, we have to face it in all the things we have to face. Even to build this in Venice was like, it looked like a nightmare, that it will never be approved because people were changing the exhibition by the weight of the thing, But if there are ways to, because all this, we are part of a society, and there are ways to change and bring the society forward. And I think many people don't want to do this work because of the inconvenience that it brings. When you do something, anything new will be difficult. Obviously, it is an uncharted path, it will be difficult. But I have found that it's not so difficult because if you manage, personally, I don't like to give up. I don't like to believe that it's not possible because I think as architects, we have to be optimistic because we always have a vision. So if you're not optimistic, you don't even feel like creating anything. So I think it's very important to remain optimistic. I personally am carried by this energy because I have enthusiasm. I imagine something and I want to see it in the ground. So I'm ready to go through everything for it. And I realize it's not so difficult, because if you go and talk to people, actually they also want. They are also, sometimes you meet somebody who will be against it. So instead of having a war, if you find there are ways to communicate, and maybe not everything is achieved in that project, but it paves the way for the next time you can do a little more. And I think in my case, I had seen that that was the only option to go in that way, because I already knew that if I give up and do the normal, one, if I would be unconscious, I could keep on building like that. But if I am already conscious, then I feel more bad. I feel much more bad to do a thing which I know it has already failed. That is something I can't bear. To go and be maybe refused, I don't mind, because it means maybe I won't be refused. That is more interesting to do. But the other one, I just do the same thing, and I will just have a shop, I will be able to live from it, and just to have my food. I won't be liking what I'm doing. So I think somehow I do believe that architects and design has the power to contribute always to evolve the society. And it sounds very idealistic, but I deeply believe in it. And I have, each time I manage one more project, with all the compromises it has made, I even more believe it. Because I believe there is a goodwill in the society who are fed up of problems. They want something more. And if we go with some doubts, then the doubt in their part meets us, and they are also afraid. But if we are really serious to do it, usually the doors open. I found that. So I would not have a reason. I know that, yes, it will be difficult, it will be inconvenient, but it can be done, It's not impossible.
I will put you in touch with this department.
Yes. Yeah. And by the way, the name is Philip Block. You can look in there are videos on the Guastavino board that, yes.
I think, of course, in this context of crisis, our architectural schools need this optimistic state of mind.
I would absolutely want to say, whichever students are here, first of all, architecture and development has never been that high as it is now. If you think of only immediate local situations, but if you look at the world, in my country, there are 120 something schools, and they want to have double. They need double the number to be able to meet the end. So, the crisis, an Italian professor told in a recent conference of developers where I had to speak, that this is not a crisis, this is a trend. It was very scary for everybody. He said, what crisis? You're fooling yourself. Look at the graphs. And he showed all kinds of graphs. And he said, look how the trend is rising in Africa, look how the trend is rising in China, India. And look at our trend. And then he showed the 20. He said, this is not a crisis. You want to think it's a crisis because it feels that you will, after 10 years, it will be fine. After 5 years, it will be fine. Maybe it will be fine if it adjusts to the inconvenience. The inconvenience is to think in a new way. And the crisis is one numbers in the paper, but we have ideas to manage our lives in a different way. If we are ready to do the work, to create a new type of way to do things, that is not a problem, because nobody is going to not exist anymore. Everything can exist. Some of the old ways of doing things are in crisis, I would say. There's a lot of jobs everywhere, and I can't tell you how much I've traveled, and I have seen the level of architecture in Spain, and I know that you have different ideas of Spain and all that, but beyond that, the general standard in Spain and Portugal is very high. And whatever happens, if you don't have a job, don't be discouraged, because the richness is the skill you have, and everywhere there is a need for this. And everywhere there is a demand, and there is not the skill. So there is no way to think that, what will I do? There's a lot to be done, and there is really, we have to be more supple. Maybe the way you are doing it is not applicable in some context, but you have all the skill to create the new way. If you understand the problem, you will find a way what to do. And I think people, schools like this, which have produced such good high standard, that the average standard is very good, that is very interesting, And that's why there is work, but you have to be also flexible. Like when there is a storm, the big tree will fall, but the grass will be saved, you know. So you have to be like the grass. Okay.
These are everything messages with the rest and.
Yes, because people were telling me, why are you going here in the time of a crisis, you know. I mean, at the time we spoke to you, we were thinking, I think, no, about going to Spain. It was not really clear. And I am not discouraged by that part. I feel much more creative to live in a true way than to live in some pretentious way. It's okay if people have to become a little humble. They also overspend, you know. When people have a lot of money, they do also stupid things, not only good things. So, you know, it's okay. You know, that is not, there are people who are really suffering, but we have to help as a general society in whatever knowledge we have to create that. And of course, some sectors are seriously affected by this. But you know, if you think of the world poverty in the whole world, it's a relative thing. You know, we have to all see all of the whole globe as one, and all the knowledge we have is going to save us. So the more knowledge we have, more chances to survive. Okay.
So, see you here in an hour.